Richard Hartley slammed his fist into the wall. The crack of bone against plaster echoed through the empty mansion. Blood dripped from his knuckles onto the marble floor. He didn't feel it, because behind that door, behind Eleanor's sunroom door, his sons were laughing. Laughing. For 8 months, Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas hadn't made a sound. Not since the night the drunk driver killed their mother. Not since Richard watched Eleanor's casket disappear into the ground while 3 5-year-old boys screamed for their mommy. Now they were laughing. And it wasn't because of him. It was because of a woman he'd never met. A woman on her hands and knees playing horse with his children while Richard bled in his own hallway. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Richard pushed the door open. The woman looked up. Young, black, on all fours with 3 boys on her back. The laughter stopped. "Mr. Hartley," she started. "Get off the floor." His voice came out cold, dead. The voice he used to fire executives and crush competitors. The woman stood quickly. His sons slid off her back and scrambled away, not toward Richard, but behind her, hiding behind a stranger, protecting her from their own father. "I can explain," the woman said. "Who are you?" "Grace Johnson. Your mother-in-law hired me 4 weeks ago. I'm the new nanny." Richard laughed bitterly. "Number 6. Or is it 7? I've lost count." Grace's jaw tightened. "Number 6. And how long until you leave? The last one lasted 8 days. Said the house felt like a tomb. The one before that made it 2 weeks. Called the children disturbed." "I'm not leaving." "They all say that." Richard looked past her at his sons. Oliver pressed against his brothers. Ethan had his arms wrapped around Lucas. All 3 of them stared at Richard with wide eyes. Fear. His own children were afraid of him. "Daddy," Lucas whispered, "are you mad at Miss Grace?" Richard's chest cracked. Mad. He wanted to fall on his knees and thank this woman. He wanted to grab his sons and hold them until the world ended. He wanted to tell them he was sorry, sorry for disappearing, sorry for hiding, sorry for failing them every single day since their mother died. Instead, he said, "Go to your rooms." "But Daddy." "Now." The boys flinched. Grace's hand moved instinctively to Oliver's shoulder. "It's okay," she said softly to them. "Go upstairs. I'll come check on you in a few minutes." They went. Oliver looked back once at the doorway, his small face crumpled with confusion. Then it was just Richard and Grace standing in Eleanor's sunroom surrounded by his dead wife's paintings. "You're bleeding," Grace said. Richard looked down at his hand. Blood ran from his split knuckles, pooling in his palm. "It's nothing." "You hit something?" "The wall." "Why?" Richard's head snapped up. "Excuse me. Why did you hit the wall, Mr. Hartley?" No one talked to him like this. Not his board, not his executives, not anyone who wanted to keep their job. "Because I heard my sons laughing," Richard said slowly, "for the first time in 8 months. And it wasn't because of me. It was because of you. A stranger. Someone I've never even met." He stepped closer to her. Grace didn't back away. "Do you know what that feels like, Miss Johnson? To fail your children so completely that a stranger can heal them in 4 weeks when you couldn't heal them in 8 months?" "Yes," Grace said quietly. "I do." Richard stopped. Something in her voice, something raw and broken, cut through his anger. "I know exactly what that feels like," Grace continued. "And I know that hitting walls doesn't make it hurt less." They stared at each other. "Who are you?" Richard asked again. But this time it wasn't a demand. It was a question. "Someone who understands grief, Mr. Hartley." Grace picked up a dish towel from the side table and held it out to him. "Someone who won't run from it." Richard didn't go back to work that day. He sat in his office with the door closed, the bloody towel wrapped around his hand, replaying the scene over and over. His son's laughter, Grace on her hands and knees, the way Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas had pressed together behind her when Richard walked in, like she was safe and he was the threat. He pulled up her file on his laptop. 4 weeks ago, his mother-in-law had sent him the application. He'd approved it without reading it, just like all the others. What did it matter? They always left. But Grace hadn't left. Richard read the file now, slowly, line by line. Grace Johnson, 28. Atlanta, Georgia. No college degree. Childcare jobs since age 20. References from families in Connecticut and Georgia. Clean background check. And at the bottom, handwritten, I understand grief. I won't run from it. Richard stared at those words. His office door opened. Grace stood in the doorway holding a first aid kit. Your hand needs to be cleaned, she said. It'll get infected. I didn't ask for your help. I know. She walked in anyway, sat in the chair across from his desk, set the first aid kit on her lap, and opened it. You can fire me if you want, she said calmly. But let me fix your hand first. Richard should have told her to leave. Should have maintained distance. Should have stayed numb the way he'd been staying numb for 8 months. He held out his hand. Grace worked in silence. She cleaned the cuts with antiseptic, her touch gentle, despite Richard's occasional flinch. She applied butterfly bandages to the worst of the gashes. She wrapped gauze around his knuckles with practiced efficiency. You've done this before, Richard said. I worked in a hospital for 2 years, before the nanny jobs. Why did you leave? Grace's hands paused, just for a second. Then she continued wrapping. It got too hard, she said. What got too hard? The children's ward. Richard felt something shift in the room. A weight, a shadow. Why was that too hard? He asked. Grace finished with the gauze and looked up at him. Her eyes were steady, but underneath, way underneath, Richard saw something familiar. Something he recognized from his own mirror. Pain. The kind that never goes away. Because I lost someone there, Grace said simply. And after that, I couldn't stand to watch other people lose anyone else. She stood up and closed the first aid kit. Your sons haven't eaten dinner. I'm going to make them something. You're welcome to join us. She walked out before Richard could respond. Richard didn't join them for dinner. He sat in his office and listened through the walls. Grace's voice warm and patient. The boys' voices quiet, but present. The clink of silverware. The occasional soft laugh that made Richard's chest ache. At 8 p.m. he heard footsteps going upstairs. Bath time, then stories. Then the boys' voices getting sleepier, trailing off into silence. At 9:30 p.m., Grace came back downstairs. Richard heard her walk toward the back door, toward the guest cottage where the nannies stayed. He was at his office door before he knew he was moving. Grace? She turned. I want to apologize, Richard said, for how I spoke to you earlier. It was, you were hurting. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. Grace studied him. But I've seen grief do worse things to people. You didn't hurt anyone but yourself. Richard looked down at his bandaged hand. I scared my sons. Yes, you did. They were afraid of me. They're afraid of losing you. There's a difference. Grace took a step closer. Those boys love you, Mr. Hartley. They ask about you every day. They watch the driveway for your car. They keep drawings they've made for you in a box under Oliver's bed, but they're too scared to give them to you. Richard's throat closed. Why are they scared? He managed. Because every time they try to get close to you, you disappear. You leave before they wake up. You come home after they're asleep. You're grieving Eleanor, and they understand that they're smarter than you think. But they're also 5 years old, and they just lost their mother, and now they think they're losing their father too. The words hit Richard like punches. I don't know how to... He stopped, tried again. I look at them and I see her. Eleanor. They have her eyes, her laugh, her... His voice broke. I can't be around them without seeing everything I lost. Grace was quiet for a long moment. I know, she finally said. How How do you know? Because I had a daughter once. Grace's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Her name was Maya. She died 2 years ago. She was 3. The world tilted. Richard stared at her. Leukemia, Grace continued. We fought for a year, hospitals' treatments watching her waste away. And when she died, I couldn't look at other children. I couldn't hear them laugh. I couldn't watch them play. Because every time I did, I saw her. I saw everything I lost. She looked directly at Richard, and he saw it now, the same grief he carried living behind her eyes. So I understand, Mr. Hartley. I understand wanting to run, wanting to hide, wanting the world to just stop for 1 minute so you can breathe. She paused. But your sons don't have a minute. They need their father now, not tomorrow. Not when you've healed. Now. Richard couldn't speak. I'm going to bed, Grace said, but I'll be here tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Not because it's my job, because those boys deserve someone who stays. She walked out. Richard stood in the hallway for a long time, alone with his bandaged hand and his broken heart, and the echo of Grace's words. The next morning, Richard woke up on his office couch at 5:47 a.m. He hadn't planned to sleep there. But after Grace left, he'd sat down to think, and the exhaustion had taken him. Now the house was quiet. The boys wouldn't wake up for another hour. Grace was probably still in the cottage. Richard stood, looked at his bandaged hand, made a decision. He walked to the kitchen and found the coffee maker, stared at it. Eleanor had always made the coffee. You put the grounds in the filter basket, a voice said behind him. Then water in the reservoir. Richard turned. Grace stood in the doorway, dressed awake, watching him with something like amusement. I know how to make coffee, Richard said. Do you? I've made coffee before. When? Richard opened his mouth, closed it. Grace walked past him, took the coffee pot, and started making coffee with efficient movements. Eleanor made the coffee, Richard admitted quietly. I figured. She made everything. She was the one who... He stopped himself. Who what? Who made this house a home? I just paid for it. She made it mean something. Grace poured water into the reservoir. And you think without her it can't mean anything anymore? Look around. It's a museum. Everything is exactly where she left it. I can't change anything because if I do, she'll really be gone. Richard's jaw tightened. Yes. She's already gone, Mr. Hartley. Grace turned on the coffee maker and faced him. Eleanor died 8 months ago, and the longer you pretend she didn't, the longer your sons have to pretend too. They can't mourn her because you won't let them. They can't move forward because you're keeping everything frozen. I'm not... Her coffee mug is still in the cabinet, unwashed, with her lipstick still on the rim. Richard flinched. Her book is still on the nightstand, Grace continued. Her car is still in the garage. Her clothes are still in the closet. Everything in this house says Eleanor is coming back. But she's not, and your sons know it. They're just waiting for you to know it too. You've been here 4 weeks, Richard said, his voice sharp. You don't know anything about... I know grief, Mr. Hartley. I lived inside it for 2 years. I kept Maya's room exactly the way she left it. I kept her sippy cups in the cabinet. I kept her favorite dress hanging in the closet, waiting for her to grow into it. Grace's voice cracked slightly. And it didn't bring her back. It just made every day feel like she'd died all over again. The coffee maker beeped. Grace poured 2 cups, handed one to Richard. I'm not trying to hurt you, she said quietly. I'm trying to help, because I see you making the same mistakes I made, and I don't want Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas to lose their father the way they lost their mother. Richard stared at the coffee cup in his hands. Eleanor's favorite blend. He hadn't changed it because changing it meant admitting she was gone. I don't know how to let go, he whispered. I know, Grace said. That's why I'm here. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. "Miss Grace, Miss Grace." The boys burst into the kitchen. Faces' bright pajamas wrinkled. They stopped short when they saw Richard. The brightness dimmed. "Good morning, boys," Richard said. His voice felt rusty. "Morning, Daddy," they mumbled. Lucas edged closer to Grace, grabbing her hand. "Are you staying for breakfast, Daddy?" Oliver asked carefully, like he expected the answer to be no. Richard looked at his son, really looked at him. 5 years old. Eleanor's eyes. A gap-toothed smile that he hadn't seen in 8 months. "Yes," Richard said. "I'm staying." Oliver blinked. "Really? Really? Do you promise?" The question cut deep. His own son needed a promise, just to believe Richard would stay for breakfast. "I promise," Richard said. Grace caught his eye and nodded slightly. Approval. Encouragement. "Okay," she said brightly. "Who wants pancakes?" "Me," all 3 boys shouted. "Mickey Mouse pancakes." "Yeah, with chocolate chips. Extra chocolate chips." Grace laughed a real laugh, warm and full, and started pulling ingredients from the cabinets. The boys clustered around her, chattering about what shapes they wanted, completely comfortable in her presence. Richard stood apart, watching, feeling like a stranger in his own kitchen. "Daddy!" Ethan tugged on his sleeve. "Do you like chocolate chips?" Richard looked down at his middle son. Ethan was the quietest of the 3, the observer always watching, but rarely speaking. "I do," Richard said. "Very much." "Miss Grace puts extra if you ask." "Does she?" "Yeah, you just have to ask nicely. Say please." Richard felt his throat tighten. "Thank you for telling me, Ethan." Ethan nodded solemnly, then ran back to Grace. Richard moved slowly toward the counter where Grace was mixing batter. "Grace. May I have extra chocolate chips?" He paused. "Please." Grace looked up at him. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, warmth, hope. "Coming right up," she said. Breakfast lasted 2 hours. Richard hadn't planned to stay that long. He had meetings, conference calls, a company that was probably wondering where the hell he was. But every time he moved to leave, one of the boys would say something, show him something, ask him something. "Daddy, look at my pancake. It has 3 eyes." "Daddy, Miss Grace taught us a new song. Want to hear it?" "Daddy, can you cut my pancake? Miss Grace cuts it in triangles, but Mommy used to cut it in squares." The last one made Richard freeze. Lucas was looking up at him. No accusation in his face, just simple fact. Mommy cut pancakes in squares. It was information, not grief. "I can try," Richard said. He took Lucas's plate and carefully cut the pancake into squares. His hands shook slightly. When he handed it back, Lucas beamed. "Perfect," Lucas said. "Just like Mommy." Richard had to leave the room. He made it to the hallway before the tears came, leaned against the wall, his forehead pressed to the cold plaster, and cried silently while his sons ate breakfast with a woman who had somehow impossibly started to put them back together. A hand touched his shoulder. "Grace." "The first time is the hardest," she said quietly. "The first breakfast. The first birthday without them. The first Christmas. The first time you do something they used to do and realize you're the one doing it now." Richard couldn't respond, could barely breathe. "But it gets easier. Not better. Never better. But easier. Because you start to see that loving them, honoring them, doesn't mean freezing everything in place. It means living, carrying them with you while you live." "How do you know when you're ready?" Richard managed. "You don't. You just start. And every day you start again. And eventually starting doesn't feel like drowning anymore. It just feels like breathing." From the kitchen, Oliver shouted, "Daddy, come back! Lucas is trying to steal my chocolate chips." "Am not. R2." Grace smiled. Your sons need you." Richard wiped his face, straightened his shoulders, took a breath. Then he walked back into the kitchen. That night, after the boys were asleep, Richard found Grace in the library. She was reading the same book as before. Beloved. She looked up when he walked in but didn't seem surprised. "How do you do it?" Richard asked. "Do what?" "Keep going. After losing—" He couldn't say the name. "After losing your daughter. How do you wake up every day?" Grace closed her book slowly. "I don't always," she admitted. "Some days I don't want to get out of bed. Some days the grief is so heavy I can barely breathe. Some days I look at your sons and I see Maya and I have to go somewhere private and cry until I can't cry anymore." "Then why do you stay?" "Because on the other days, the days when Oliver laughs at my terrible horse noises, or Ethan shows me a drawing he's proud of, or Lucas asks me to read him one more story on those days, I remember why I'm still alive." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark garden. "I couldn't save Maya," she said. "I tried everything. I prayed. I begged. I would have sold my soul to keep her alive. But she died anyway. And after that, I thought there was no point. No point to anything. I was done." "What changed?" "Someone told me about a family in Connecticut. 3 kids who'd lost their nanny suddenly. They needed help. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be around children ever again, but something made me go." Grace turned to face Richard. "And when I walked into that house and saw those 3 kids scared, confused, looking for someone to hold on to, I realized something. I couldn't save Maya. But maybe I could save someone else. Maybe I could take all the love I still had for her and give it to children who needed it." "Is that why you came here?" "Partly. Mrs. Bennett told me about your boys. 3 5-year-olds who stopped speaking after their mother died, who were slipping away while their father drowned in his own grief." Grace's voice softened. "I knew I had to try." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "What happened to your husband?" he finally asked. "Maya's father." Grace's face changed, closed off. "He blamed me," she said flatly. "Said I should have noticed the symptoms sooner. Should have pushed the doctors harder. Should have done something, anything to save her. He couldn't look at me without seeing his dead daughter. So he left. Took everything in the divorce. All her photos. All her clothes. All her toys." She touched the locket at her neck. "This is all I have left of her." Richard recognized that gesture. The way Eleanor used to touch her wedding ring when she was thinking about something important. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. It wasn't your fault." "No, I mean I'm sorry for earlier, for how I treated you when I came home. You didn't deserve that." Grace looked at him for a long moment. "You're different than I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "Mrs. Bennett told me you were cold, impossible to reach, that you'd been a ghost since Eleanor died, and nothing could bring you back. Maybe nothing can." "I don't believe that." Grace stepped closer to him. "Because ghosts don't cry when they hear their sons laughing. Ghosts don't hit walls because they feel too much. Ghosts don't ask how to keep going." She was close enough now that Richard could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Could see the strength there, and underneath it the same fractures he carried in himself. "You're not a ghost, Richard Hartley," Grace said quietly. "You're just lost, and lost people can be found." Richard didn't sleep that night. He lay on his office couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything Grace had said. About Maya, about Eleanor, about love that didn't end just because someone died. At 3 a.m., he got up and walked to the master bedroom. He hadn't opened this door in 8 months. His hand trembled as he turned the knob. The room was exactly as Eleanor had left it. The bed made with her favorite blue quilt. Her robe hanging on the bathroom door. Her perfume bottles lined up on the dresser. Her book on the nightstand, bookmark halfway through. Richard walked slowly to her side of the bed, sat down, picked up the book. Pride and Prejudice, her favorite. She'd read it a dozen times, always finding something new to love about it. Richard opened to the bookmarked page and started reading. He read until the sun came up. And when he finally closed the book, something inside him had shifted, not healed. Healing would take years, maybe forever. But shifted, like a bone that had been set wrong and was finally starting to reset. He walked to the closet and opened it. Eleanor's clothes hung there perfectly arranged, still smelling faintly of her perfume. Richard touched the sleeve of her favorite blue dress, the one she'd worn to their last anniversary dinner. "I miss you," he whispered. "Every day. Every minute. I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be anything." Silence. "But I have to try. For the boys. For Oliver and Ethan and Lucas. They need me. And you're not here to help them anymore. So it has to be me." He took a shaky breath. "There's a woman. Grace. She's helping them. Helping me. I don't know what I feel about that. I don't know if it's okay to feel anything. But she made them laugh, Eleanor. She made them laugh when I couldn't. And I think..." His voice cracked. "I think maybe you sent her. I don't know why. I don't know how. But she showed up exactly when we needed her." Richard closed the closet door. "I love you," he said to the empty room. "I will always love you. But I have to start living again. For them. And for me." He walked out of the master bedroom and didn't look back. At 6 a.m., Grace was already in the kitchen. She turned when Richard walked in, surprise flickering across her face. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and an old sweater. Casual. Human. "You're up early," she said. "I couldn't sleep." "Meetings." "No, I canceled them." Grace's eyebrows rose. "Canceled? I'm taking the day off. I thought..." Richard paused. "I thought maybe I could spend it with my sons." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "They'd like that," she said. "They'd like that very much." "Would you..." Richard stopped himself, started again. "Would you stay? Show me what you do with them, how you make them laugh. I want to learn." "You don't need to learn from me, Richard. You're their father. You already know how to love them." "I've forgotten." "Then let them remind you." Footsteps on the stairs, small voices getting louder. "Miss Grace! Miss Grace!" The boys tumbled into the kitchen full of energy, full of life. They stopped when they saw Richard, and for a moment the old wariness flickered in their eyes. "Good morning, boys," Richard said. "Morning, Daddy." Oliver studied him. "You're not wearing work clothes." "No, I'm not going to work today." "Why not?" Richard knelt down so he was at eye level with his sons. 3 pairs of eyes. Eleanor's eyes stared back at him. "Because I want to spend the day with you," Richard said. "All of you, if you'll have me." The boys looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind only siblings share. Then Lucas stepped forward. "Can you be a horsey?" he asked. Richard blinked. "A horsey? Miss Grace is a good horsey, but we've never had a daddy horsey. Can you do it?" Richard looked up at Grace. She was trying not to smile. "I don't know how to be a horsey," Richard admitted. "It's easy," Ethan said seriously. "You get on your hands and knees and make noises, and we ride on your back. Miss Grace can show you." Grace walked over and knelt down beside Richard. "It helps if you commit to the role," she said, laughter in her voice. Full neighing, head tosses, the works. Richard Hartley. Billionaire CEO, master of the boardroom, terror of Wall Street, got on his hands and knees on his kitchen floor. "Like this," he asked. "Lower your head more," Lucas instructed. "And arch your back. Horses have arched backs." Richard adjusted. "Now neigh," Oliver commanded. Richard made a sound that was somewhere between a cough and a groan. The boys burst out laughing. "That's not a neigh," Ethan giggled. "Miss Grace, show him." Grace got on her hands and knees beside Richard and let out a perfect horse neigh, loud, authentic, complete with a dramatic head toss. The boys cheered. Richard tried again. Better this time. Still not great, but better. "Okay," Lucas shouted. "Now we ride." 3 small bodies piled onto Richard's back. He wobbled, steadied himself, and started crawling across the kitchen floor. "Faster, Daddy, faster!" Richard crawled faster, making horse noises that got more confident with each stride. The boys bounced on his back, shrieking with delight. Grace watched from the counter, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Richard caught her eye as he turned the corner around the kitchen island. "How am I doing?" he called. "Perfect," Grace whispered. "Absolutely perfect." For the first time in 8 months, laughter filled the Hartley mansion. And this time, it wasn't just the children. It was their father, too. 3 weeks changed everything. Richard started coming home at 4 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. He ate breakfast with his sons every morning. He learned to make pancakes badly, but he made them. He crawled on his hands and knees until his back ached and his knees bruised, and he didn't care because his boys were laughing. But it was Grace who fascinated him. He watched her constantly. The way she moved through his house like she belonged there. The way she spoke to his sons, never talking down to them, never dismissing their feelings, always listening like every word mattered. The way she could calm Lucas's nightmares with just her voice. The way she made Oliver feel brave enough to try new things. The way she got Ethan quiet, watchful Ethan to actually talk about what he was feeling. Richard had hired the best child psychologists in New York. None of them had accomplished what Grace did in 3 weeks. One night, he found her in the library again. "Don't you ever sleep?" he asked from the doorway. Grace looked up from her book. "Don't you?" "Touché." He walked in and sat across from her. This had become their routine, these late-night conversations in the library, both of them too haunted by their own ghosts to sleep. "Can I ask you something?" Richard said. "You can ask. I might not answer." "Fair enough." He leaned forward. "How do you do it?" "Every day you pour love into my sons. You give them everything. Doesn't it hurt? Doesn't it remind you of Maya?" "Yes." Grace closed her book and set it aside. "Every single day. Every time Lucas hugs me, I think about how Maya used to hug me. Every time Oliver shows me something he's proud of, I remember Maya showing me her drawings. Every time Ethan needs comfort, I feel Maya's weight in my arms." "Then why do you keep doing it?" "Because the alternative is worse." Grace's voice was steady, but Richard could hear the cracks underneath. "After Maya died, I tried to stop loving. I thought if I could just turn it off, the caring, the connection, then nothing could hurt me again. But you can't turn it off. Love doesn't work that way. It just sits inside you rotting, turning into something toxic." She looked at him directly. "Your son saved me, Richard. I know that sounds backward. I'm supposed to be helping them. But the truth is, they gave me somewhere to put all the love I still had for Maya. They gave me a reason to keep going." Richard felt something shift in his chest. A recognition, a kinship. "I thought I was dead inside," he admitted. "After Eleanor, I thought the part of me that could feel anything had been buried with her. And now—" Richard didn't answer right away. He looked at Grace, really looked at her. The strength in her eyes, the gentleness in her hands, the way she carried her grief like armor, using it to protect instead of destroy. "Now I'm not sure," he said quietly. "I feel things I didn't think I could feel anymore, and I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it. You just have to feel it." "Is that what you do?" "I try." Grace smiled, a real smile, tired but genuine. "Some days are harder than others." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, rain started to fall, pattering against the windows. "Can I tell you something about Eleanor?" Richard asked suddenly. Grace nodded. She would have liked you. Grace's eyes widened slightly. You think so? I know so. Eleanor had this gift: she could see people. Really see them. Not what they showed the world, but who they actually were underneath. She would have seen you in about 30 seconds. Would have known exactly what you'd been through, exactly what you were carrying. Richard's voice caught. And she would have loved you for it. Grace's eyes filled with tears. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time, she whispered. It's the truth. They looked at each other across the dim library, two broken people finding something unexpected in the wreckage. I should go to bed, Grace said, finally standing up. The boys wake up early. Grace. She turned at the door. Thank you, Richard said. For staying, for not running, for everything. Grace smiled. Thank you for letting me. She left, and Richard sat alone in the library, listening to the rain, and wondering when exactly Grace Johnson had become essential to his survival. The next morning, everything went wrong. Richard was in the kitchen attempting to make scrambled eggs, another skill he was trying to learn, when his phone rang. His COO's name flashed on the screen. Marcus, what is it? Richard, we have a problem. The Henderson deal is falling apart. They're threatening to pull out unless you fly to Chicago today. 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 Right now. The jet's being prepped. Richard looked at the eggs burning in the pan. Looked at the doorway where his sons would appear any minute expecting breakfast with their father. 3 weeks ago, he wouldn't have hesitated. Work always came first. Work was the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense. But now, can't you handle it? Richard asked. Silence on the line. Richard, this is a $400 million deal. Henderson specifically asked for you. I'm aware of the numbers, Marcus. Then you understand why I can't handle it. This needs the CEO. Richard heard footsteps upstairs, small feet running toward the stairs. Give me an hour, he said. Richard, 1 hour. I'll be there. He hung up and turned off the stove, scraping the burnt eggs into the garbage. His hands were shaking. Daddy! Daddy! The boys burst into the kitchen, already dressed. Grace's doing, Richard knew. They ran toward him, then stopped when they saw his face. What's wrong, Daddy? Oliver asked. Richard knelt down. I have to go to work today, boys. I'm sorry. The light in their eyes dimmed. Richard watched it happen. Watched them retreat into themselves. Watched the walls go up. You said you'd stay, Lucas whispered. I know I did. But something came up and... You promised. The word hit Richard like a physical blow. Promised. He'd promised. Lucas, It's okay, Daddy. Oliver's voice was flat, resigned. The voice of a child who'd learned not to expect anything. We understand. Work is important. No, this wasn't okay. This wasn't... Give me 1 minute, Richard said. Don't move. 1 minute. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus back. Richard, are you on your way? No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. I'm not coming to Chicago. Richard, this deal. Send Peterson. He's been working on Henderson for 6 months. He knows the account better than I do. Henderson asked for you specifically. Then tell Henderson I'm unavailable. Tell him I have a family emergency. Do you... Richard looked at his 3 sons standing in his kitchen, watching him with cautious hope in their eyes. Yes, he said. I do. He hung up. The boys stared at him. Does that mean you're staying? Ethan asked quietly. Richard put his phone on the counter. That means I'm staying. But your work? My work can wait. You can't. Lucas launched himself at Richard, wrapping his small arms around his father's legs. Oliver followed. Then Ethan. Richard dropped to his knees and pulled all 3 of them close, holding them so tight he could feel their hearts beating against his chest. I'm sorry, he whispered into their hair. I'm so sorry for all the times I left. I'm not going to do that anymore. I promise. You promised before. Lucas mumbled against his shoulder. I know. And I broke it. But I'm going to keep trying. Every day, I'm going to try to be better. And when I mess up, because I will mess up, I need you to tell me. Okay. I need you to say, Daddy, you're messing up. Can you do that? Oliver pulled back and looked at him seriously. We can do that. Good. Now. Richard stood up, lifting Lucas with him. Who wants to help me make breakfast? I burned the eggs, but I think we can try again. Miss Grace makes better eggs, Ethan said. I know she does, but I want to learn. Will you teach me? The boys looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Okay, Oliver said. But you have to listen. Miss Grace says listening is the most important part of learning. Miss Grace is very smart, Richard agreed. Where is she anyway? She's in the garden, Lucas said. She goes there in the mornings. She says it helps her think. Richard set Lucas down. Why don't you three start getting the ingredients? I'm going to go find Miss Grace and ask her to supervise. Make sure I don't burn the house down. The boys giggled and ran toward the refrigerator. Richard walked to the garden. He found Grace sitting on the bench by the roses. Eleanor's roses, the ones she'd planted the year they got married. Grace had her eyes closed, her face tilted toward the morning sun. She looked peaceful. She looked beautiful. The thought hit Richard before he could stop it, and he stumbled slightly on the path. Grace's eyes opened. Richard, is everything okay? Fine. Everything's fine. He stopped. I stayed. What? There was a work emergency. Chicago. A $400 million deal. My COO said I had to fly out immediately. Grace stood up slowly. And you stayed. I stayed. She stared at him. Richard, I know. I know it's probably stupid. I know my board is going to be furious. I know there might be consequences. He took a step closer to her. But Lucas looked at me and said I promised. And I realized that no deal, no amount of money is worth breaking another promise to my sons. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hand to her mouth. I don't know what I'm doing, Richard admitted. I don't know if I'm making the right choices, but I know that 3 weeks ago, my sons were afraid of me. And today, they're in my kitchen trying to teach me how to make eggs. That has to count for something. Right? It counts for everything, Grace whispered. They stood there in Eleanor's garden, surrounded by roses, looking at each other. The boys want you to supervise my cooking, Richard said finally. They don't trust me not to burn the house down. Grace laughed a real laugh, bright and warm. They're smart boys. They get it from their mother. I think they get it from both their parents. Richard's heart stuttered. It was such a simple thing to say, but the way Grace said it, like she saw him, like she believed in him. Come on, Grace said, walking past him toward the house. Let's go make sure you don't destroy those eggs. Richard followed her, feeling lighter than he had in 8 months. They made breakfast together, all 5 of them crowded into the kitchen. The eggs were still slightly burnt. The toast was overdone. The orange juice had pulp in it, even though Oliver had specifically requested no pulp. It was the best meal Richard had ever had. After breakfast, Grace took the boys to the playroom while Richard cleaned up. He was loading the dishwasher when his phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Peterson closed the Henderson deal. They were actually happier with him than they would have been with you. Said he knew the account better. Don't know whether to be relieved or insulted on your behalf. Richard smiled and texted back. Relieved. Definitely relieved. His phone buzzed again. Everything okay at home? Richard looked toward the playroom, where he could hear his sons laughing. Everything is good, he typed. Better than it's been in a long time. That night, after the boys were asleep, Richard knocked on Grace's cottage door. She opened it, surprised. Richard, is something wrong? No, He held up a bottle of wine. I thought maybe you'd want to talk. without the kids around. Grace hesitated. That's probably not appropriate. Probably not. Richard didn't move. But I have questions. About Maya. About how you survived losing her. And I think you might have questions too. About Eleanor. About how I'm surviving losing her. He paused. Or not surviving, as the case may be. Grace studied him for a long moment. One glass, she said finally. That's it. One glass. She stepped aside to let him in. The cottage was small but comfortable, a living room, a bedroom, a tiny kitchen. Grace had made it her own in the 4 weeks she'd been there. Books stacked on every surface, a soft blanket thrown over the couch, photos on the nightstand. Richard stopped. A photo of a little girl, bald head, gap-toothed smile, holding a dandelion. That's Maya, Grace said quietly. She's beautiful. She was. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Grace's voice cracked slightly. She got her smile from her father, her stubbornness from me. Richard turned to face her. Tell me about her. What do you want to know? Everything. So Grace told him. She told him about the day Maya was born, how she'd screamed for 3 hours straight, and then suddenly gone quiet and smiled like she'd just been testing everyone's patience. She told him about Maya's first steps straight toward a stray cat in the park, completely fearless. She told him about Maya's obsession with dandelions, how she'd blow on them and make wishes convinced that every wish would come true. She told him about the diagnosis. She was 2.5. Grace said, her voice hollow. She'd been tired a lot, bruising easily. We thought she was just a clumsy toddler. Then one day she got a fever that wouldn't break. We took her to the ER and they did blood tests, and then a doctor came in with this look on his face. She stopped, took a breath. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, all they call it. The doctor said it had a good survival rate, 85% in children. He said those odds were in our favor. But they weren't. No, they weren't. Grace wiped her eyes. Maya fought for a year. Chemo, radiation, a bone marrow transplant that didn't take. We lived in that hospital. I watched my baby girl disappear piece by piece. Her hair, her energy, her laugh. She stopped laughing at the end. She was in too much pain. Richard's chest ached. She died on a Tuesday. Grace continued. April 15th. Tax day. The most ridiculous, mundane day. I always thought she'd die on some meaningful date, her birthday, Christmas, something that would feel important. But it was just a regular Tuesday. The sun was shining. Birds were singing outside the window. And my daughter stopped breathing. She looked at Richard, tears streaming down her face. The worst part wasn't the death. The worst part was everything that came after. My husband blamed me, said I should have pushed the doctors harder, should have sought more opinions, should have done something. He couldn't look at me without seeing her. So he left, filed for divorce within a month. Took everything. Everything. Every photo of Maya, every toy, every piece of clothing. He said he needed them, that I had enough memories. I was too broken to fight him. Grace touched the locket at her neck. This is all I have left. A locket my mother gave me with Maya's picture inside. That's monstrous, Richard said. He took your daughter's belongings after you'd just lost her. People do monstrous things when they're grieving. I've learned that. I've even learned to forgive him in a way. He was drowning too. He just chose to take me down with him. Richard moved closer to her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Grace. Don't be sorry, just... She looked up at him. Tell me about Eleanor. Please, I need to think about something other than my own pain. So Richard told her. He told her about meeting Eleanor at a coffee shop, how she'd accidentally spilled her latte on his laptop, and then argued with him for 20 minutes about whether it was his fault for putting his laptop too close to the edge of the counter. He told her about their first date, a disaster involving a flat tire, a rainstorm, and a greasy diner that ended up serving the best pie either of them had ever tasted. He told her about the day he proposed, how he'd planned this elaborate setup on a rooftop at sunset, And then Eleanor had beaten him to it, pulling out her own ring and asking him first. "She proposed to you." Grace laughed through her tears. "She said she got tired of waiting for me to get my act together." Richard smiled at the memory. "We argued about who was actually proposing to whom for about an hour. Eventually we decided we'd propose to each other simultaneously. That sounds like her, from what the boys have told me." "What do they tell you?" "That she sang off-key in the car, that she let them eat dessert first on Tuesdays, that she smelled like flowers and paint." Grace paused. "That she made everything feel safe." Richard's throat tightened. She did. She made everything feel safe. The world made sense when Eleanor was in it. And then she was gone, and nothing made sense anymore. "How did it happen?" Richard's hands clenched. "The boys had fevers, all three of them at the same time. We were out of children's Tylenol. Eleanor said she'd run to the pharmacy, it was just 15 minutes away. I offered to go instead, but she said the boys needed me. They were fussy. They wanted their daddy." He stopped, breathed. "I kissed her at the door, told her to drive safe. She laughed and said she always drove safe. And then she walked out, and I went back to the boys, and 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door." Richard, "A drunk driver, ran a red light, hit her car on the driver's side. They said she died instantly. They said she didn't suffer." His voice broke. "But I don't believe that. I can't believe that. Because if she died instantly, that means she didn't get to say goodbye. She didn't get to think about her boys one last time. She just stopped. Stopped." Richard's eyes were wet. "And I've been trying to stop too ever since. Trying to make everything freeze so I don't have to keep moving forward without her." Grace reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, alive. "You can't stop," she said quietly. "I tried. After Maya. I tried to freeze everything to keep her room exactly the way she left it, to preserve every trace of her existence. And it didn't bring her back. It just kept me trapped in the moment of her death." "So what do you do? How do you move forward?" "You carry them with you, not their death, their life. You remember who they were, not how they died. You tell stories about them. You laugh about the funny things they did. You cry about the things they'll never get to do. But you keep moving, because they would want you to keep moving." Richard looked at her, this woman who had lost everything and somehow found a way to keep loving. "You're extraordinary," he said. "You know that—" Grace shook her head. "I'm just surviving, same as you." "No, not the same. I've been hiding from my grief, running from it. You walked straight into mine and stayed. Because hiding doesn't work. Running doesn't work. The only thing that works is going through it. And nobody should have to go through it alone." They sat there in the tiny cottage, hands intertwined, two people who had lost the most important people in their lives. "Can I ask you something?" Richard said. "Of course. Do you ever think about falling in love again?" The question hung in the air. Grace's hand tensed in his. "I don't know. Sometimes. I think about Maya's father, how much I loved him, how quickly that love turned to poison after she died. And I wonder if I'm even capable of it anymore, of loving someone without the grief getting in the way. I wonder the same thing. And what do you conclude?" Richard looked at her. "I conclude that I don't know, but I know that for the first time in 8 months, I want to find out." Grace's breath caught. "Richard, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed to say it. I needed you to know that whatever this is, whatever's happening between us, it means something to me." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "It means something to me too," she finally said. "But I work for you. I live in your guest cottage. I take care of your children. If this becomes something, people will talk. People will judge. They'll say I'm after your money, or that you're taking advantage of your help, or let them talk. It's not that simple." "Why not?" Because your sons just lost their mother. They can't lose their nanny too. Not if this doesn't work out. Not if we start something and it falls apart. Richard felt the truth of her words like a weight. You're right, he admitted. I didn't think about that. I know you didn't, but I have to. Those boys are my responsibility. I can't let my feelings, whatever they are, put them at risk. So what do we do? Grace released his hand and stood up. We wait, she said. We keep doing what we're doing. We help those boys heal. We help ourselves heal. And if somewhere down the line, when things are more stable, when the grief isn't so raw, if there's still something between us, then we figure it out. Then we figure it out. Richard stood too. I don't want to wait. I know, neither do I. Grace gave him a sad smile. But some things are worth waiting for. She walked him to the door. Good night, Richard. Good night, Grace. He stepped out into the night air, turned back. Grace. Yes. I'm glad you're here. Whatever happens, I'm glad you stayed. So am I. She closed the door. Richard walked back to the house, his heart full of something he couldn't name, his mind racing with possibilities he wasn't ready to explore. But for the first time in 8 months, he was looking forward to tomorrow. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Richard worked from home as much as possible. He had breakfast with his sons every morning and dinner with them every night. He learned to cook badly at first, then passably, then almost well. He played horsey until his knees gave out. He read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. And every night after the boys were asleep, he talked to Grace. They kept their distance physically, no more hand-holding, no more intimate conversations in the cottage. But they couldn't stop talking. About their children, about their grief, about the lives they'd lived before everything fell apart. Richard learned that Grace had wanted to be a doctor before Maya got sick, that she'd dropped out of pre-med to take care of her daughter, that she'd never gone back, never could go back because hospitals made her panic now. Grace learned that Richard had grown up poor dirt, poor food stamps and hand-me-downs poor, that he'd built his company from nothing, that Eleanor had been the only person who'd seen past his money to the scared kid from Newark underneath. They learned each other, and the more Richard learned, the harder it became to keep his distance. He started noticing things, the way Grace hummed while she cooked, the way she absent-mindedly tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, really laughed, not politely. He noticed how his heart sped up when she walked into a room, how his day felt incomplete if he didn't talk to her, how he found himself looking for excuses to be near her, helping with the dishes, offering to carry groceries, suggesting they both put the boys to bed. He was falling for her. And he couldn't stop. One evening they were sitting on the porch after the boys fell asleep. Grace had made tea chamomile, Eleanor's favorite. Richard hadn't been able to drink it since she died, but tonight he took a cup. You're drinking the chamomile, Grace observed. I thought it was time. Time for what? To stop avoiding things that remind me of her. Richard took a sip. It tasted like memory. You were right. Running doesn't work. The only way out is through. Grace smiled. I wish I'd figured that out as quickly as you did. I had a good teacher. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. Can I ask you something? Grace said. Anything. Do you think Eleanor would approve of me being here? Of how close I've gotten to the boys? Richard considered the question carefully. I think Eleanor would approve of anyone who made her sons laugh again, he said finally. I think she'd see exactly what I see, a woman who's been through hell and chose to keep loving anyway. And I think she'd tell me I was an idiot if I let you go. Grace's breath caught. Richard. I know, we're waiting, we're being careful, but I need you to know that this isn't just gratitude. It isn't just proximity, or grief or loneliness. There's something real here. At least there is for me. Grace set down her teacup. Her hands were trembling. There is for me too, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Why? Because the last time I loved someone, I lost everything. My daughter, my husband, my home, my sense of who I was. She looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't know if I can survive losing everything again. What if you don't have to? What if this time is different? How can you know that? I can't, but I know that the alternative is worse. Richard took her hand gently, giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. You taught me that. You said hiding doesn't work. Running doesn't work. The only thing that works is going through it. That was about grief. Maybe it's about love too. Maybe the only way to find out if this is real is to go through it. Together. Grace stared at their intertwined hands. The boys adore you. They already call you Mama Grace when they think I'm not listening. Grace's head snapped up. They do? Oliver started it last week. The other two picked it up immediately. They don't know I heard, but... Richard? Her voice was thick. I can't replace their mother. Nobody's asking you to replace Eleanor. The boys don't want a replacement mother. They want someone who loves them. Someone who stays. Someone who feels like family. He squeezed her hand. You're already that person, Grace. You have been since the day you got on your hands and knees and played horsey. Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Grace laughed a watery, broken sound. You're impossible, she said. I've been told. They looked at each other in the starlight. Two broken people holding hands on a porch, terrified of the future and unable to let go of each other. Not yet, Grace said finally. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not yet. The boys need more time. We need more time. Let's get through the first year. Let's make sure this is real, and not just two lonely people grabbing onto each other in the dark. And after the first year, Grace smiled a real smile full of hope and fear, and something that looked a lot like love. After the first year, we'll figure it out. Richard raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I can wait, he said. You'd better. They sat there together, watching the stars, not speaking, not needing to. And for the first time since Eleanor died, Richard felt like he might actually have a future worth waiting for. Mother's Day arrived like a knife to the chest. Richard woke up that morning with his heart already pounding. He'd been dreading this day for weeks, the first Mother's Day without Eleanor. The first one where his sons would have no mother to make cards for, no mother to bring breakfast in bed, no mother to hug and thank for everything. He lay on his office couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe. Last year, Eleanor had been alive. The boys had made her cards covered in crayon scribbles and glitter that got everywhere. She'd cried happy tears and hung them on the refrigerator where they stayed for months. She'd said it was the best Mother's Day she'd ever had. It was also her last. Richard forced himself to get up, to shower, to dress. He'd planned the day carefully, take the boys to the cemetery, say a few words at Eleanor's grave, come home, and survive until bedtime. That was all he had to do. Just survive. He walked downstairs expecting silence, expecting the boys to still be asleep. Instead, he heard voices coming from the playroom. Richard moved towards the sound, his footsteps quiet on the hardwood floor. The playroom door was open. He stopped just outside, listening. No, like this, Oliver was saying. You have to make the hearts bigger. Miss Grace likes big hearts. I'm trying, Ethan replied. The red crayon is broken. Use pink, Lucas suggested. Pink is almost red. Richard's breath caught. They were making cards. He stepped into the doorway and saw them, his three sons, sitting on the floor with Grace, surrounded by construction paper, crayons, glue sticks, and glitter. Grace was helping Lucas cut out a shape, her head bent close to his. Richard's eyes went to the cards spread across the floor. Not for Eleanor. For Grace. Miss Grace. Miss Grace. Lucas held up his drawing, a stick figure with dark skin and a big smile surrounded by lopsided hearts. In crooked crayon letters it said, "For Miss Grace, you make us smile." Oliver's card was more elaborate, "I love you, Miss Grace," with 3 stick figures holding her hand. Ethan's was messier, but clearer, a woman on her hands and knees with boys on her back. The horsey game. Richard's chest cracked open. Grace looked up and saw him standing there. Her face went pale. She stood quickly, almost knocking over the glue. "Mr. Hartley." "Richard, I didn't ask them to do this," she said, her voice shaking. "I swear, I told them we should make cards for their mother." "Their mother," Richard repeated flatly. "Yes, I said today was Mother's Day, and we should make something special for—" "But we did make something for Mommy," Peter interrupted. He held up another card. This one had angel wings and flowers. In careful letters it said, "We miss you, Mommy." Richard felt the air leave his lungs. They hadn't forgotten Eleanor. They'd just made room for someone else. Lucas tugged on Richard's sleeve. "Daddy, can Miss Grace come with us to see Mommy?" Richard looked at Grace. She was already shaking her head, backing away. "No, sweetie, I shouldn't. That's private. That's for your family." "You are family," Lucas said. The words hung in the air like a bell that couldn't be unrung. Richard stared at his youngest son, 5 years old, gap-toothed, wearing a shirt with a dinosaur on it. So simple, so certain. You are family. Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Lucas, honey, if she wants to come," Richard heard himself say, "she can." Grace's head snapped toward him. "Richard, are you sure I don't want to intrude? Eleanor was your wife. She was their mother. I have no right to—" "You have every right." Richard's voice was rough. "You're part of this family now, Grace, whether you meant to be or not. And I think—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I think Eleanor would want you there." Grace covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please," Oliver said softly. "Please come with us, Miss Grace." Grace looked at the 3 boys, these children she'd come to love, who had somehow become hers, even though she'd never planned on loving again. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll come." An hour later, they stood together at Eleanor's grave. The cemetery was quiet. Spring flowers bloomed along the pathways. Birds sang in the trees overhead. It was beautiful, the kind of day Eleanor would have loved. Richard held Lucas's hand on one side and Oliver's on the other. Ethan stood close to Grace, his small fingers wrapped around hers. The boys placed their angel card on the headstone, the one that said, "We miss you, Mommy." They stood there for a moment, silent, staring at their mother's name carved in granite. Then Lucas tugged on Grace's hand. "Tell Mommy you're nice," he whispered. Grace's knees nearly buckled. "What? Tell her, so she knows you're taking care of us." Grace looked at Richard. He nodded slightly, his own eyes wet. Slowly, Grace knelt in front of Eleanor's grave. The grass was soft beneath her knees. The headstone was cold when she touched it. "Hi, Eleanor," she said softly. "We've never met, but I feel like I know you. Your boys talk about you all the time. They tell me you smelled like roses. They tell me you sang off-key in the car. They tell me you let them eat dessert first on Tuesdays." Her voice cracked. "I hope you don't mind that I love them. I'm not trying to replace you. Nobody could ever replace you. I couldn't help it. They needed someone, and I was there, and they crawled into my heart before I could stop them." Tears streamed down her face. "I lost my daughter 2 years ago. Her name was Maya. She was 3. I thought I'd never love anyone again, thought I wasn't capable of it anymore. But your boys changed that. They reminded me that love doesn't end just because someone dies. It just finds new ways to grow." She pressed her hand against the cold granite. "I promise I'll take care of them. I promise I'll make them laugh and hold them when they cry and be there when they need me. I promise I'll tell them about you every single day so they never forget how much you loved them." Grace took a shaky breath. "Thank you for sharing them with me. Thank you for giving me something to live for again." She stood up, wiping her eyes, and stepped back. Oliver moved forward next. He stood on his tiptoes to touch the top of the headstone. "Hi, Mommy," he said. "I miss you. I miss your pancakes and your hugs and the way you used to read stories with funny voices." He paused. "Miss Grace does funny voices too. Not as good as yours, but pretty good. I think you'd like her. She plays horsey with us. She makes us laugh. She doesn't get sad when we talk about you." That last line broke something in Richard. He'd been the one getting sad, the one pulling away, the one making his sons feel like loving someone new meant forgetting their mother. Ethan went next. He didn't say anything, just pressed a small rock against the headstone, something he'd picked up on the walk over, a gift for his mother. Then he whispered something too quiet for anyone to hear and stepped back. Lucas was last. "Mommy," he said, "I have a question." Richard's throat tightened. "Is it okay if I love Miss Grace too? Not instead of you. Just also. Because she's really nice, and she makes Daddy smile, and I think maybe she could be like a second mommy. But only if you say it's okay." Silence. A breeze rustled through the trees. A bird sang somewhere in the distance. "I think Mommy says yes," Lucas decided. "Because the wind blew and you said the wind is Mommy's kisses." Richard's knees gave out. He knelt on the grass in front of his wife's grave, his sons around him, and sobbed. 8 months of grief came pouring out, all the pain he'd been hiding, all the guilt he'd been carrying, all the fear that he was failing as a father. Grace knelt beside him. She didn't say anything, just put her hand on his back and let him cry. The boys gathered around them, small hands touching Richard's shoulders, small voices saying, "It's okay, Daddy. It's okay." They stayed at the cemetery for a long time. When they finally left, something had shifted. Richard couldn't name it, couldn't explain it. But as they walked back to the car, Grace holding Lucas's hand, Oliver and Ethan flanking Richard on either side, he felt lighter than he had in months. Like Eleanor had given them permission. Like it was okay to keep living. 2 weeks later, the whispers started. Richard was at a charity gala at the Manhattan Club, one of those events he couldn't avoid no matter how much he wanted to. His mother-in-law had insisted. "You can't hide forever," Margaret Bennett had said. "People want to see you. They want to know you're okay." So Richard went. He put on a tuxedo and shook hands and made small talk with people who'd known Eleanor, people who'd sent flowers after the funeral and then never called again. William Crawford, a fellow tech CEO, approached him near the bar. "Richard, good to see you out." "William, how's business?" "Can't complain." William's wife, Diana, appeared at his elbow. "Diana, you remember Richard Hartley?" "Of course." Diana's smile was sharp. "Richard, how are the boys?" "Better. Much better, actually." "Yes, we've heard." Diana exchanged a look with William. "You found wonderful help. What's her name again?" Warning bells went off in Richard's head. "Grace Johnson. And she's been quite devoted to the children, from what I hear." "She's excellent at her job." "Of course." Diana touched his arm, the gesture somehow condescending. "It's just, people have noticed, that's all. A young black woman living in your guest cottage. The children clearly adore her. And you've been seen together at the farmer's market, the park, the grocery store." "We were buying groceries," Richard said flatly. "Naturally. But you know how people talk. A handsome widower. A pretty nanny. 3 impressionable children." She smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "Some might say it looks inappropriate." Richard's jaw tightened. "And what exactly is inappropriate about it?" "Nothing, I'm sure. We're just looking out for you, Richard. For the boys' sake. A scandal wouldn't be good for anyone. There's no scandal. Not yet. Diana patted his arm again. Just something to think about. She walked away, leaving Richard standing at the bar with his hands shaking. He left the gala early and drove home too fast, his mind racing. Diana Crawford was a gossip, everyone knew that. But if she was talking, others were too. And if others were talking, Grace was in the kitchen when he got home washing dishes. "You're back early," she said. "How was the gala?" "Fine." She turned at his tone. "Richard, what's wrong?" "Nothing. It's nothing." "It's clearly not nothing. You look like you've seen a ghost." Richard leaned against the counter, rubbing his face. "People are talking." "Talking about what?" "Us. You. The boys." A woman at the gala made some comments about how inappropriate it looks, a young black woman living in my guest cottage spending all her time with my children. Grace went very still. What did she say exactly? Does it matter? The point is, people are noticing. People are making assumptions. And if it gets back to the boys, it won't. You don't know that. Richard. Grace dried her hands and turned to face him fully. People have been making assumptions about me my whole life, about my skin color, about my class, about where I belong and where I don't. I've learned not to let it affect me. This is different. How? Because it's not just about you. It's about Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas. It's about what they'll hear, what they'll think. Grace was quiet for a moment. "Then we have a choice to make," she said finally. "Either we let the whispers dictate how we live our lives, or we don't." It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Grace stepped closer to him. "Richard, I've spent 2 years hiding from my grief. 2 years running from anything that might hurt me. And you know what I learned? You can't outrun the world. You can't make people stop talking. All you can do is decide whether their opinions matter more than your own happiness." Richard stared at her. "I don't know what we are," he admitted. "I don't know what this is between us, but I know that my sons are happy for the first time in 8 months. I know that this house feels like a home again, and I know that I'm not willing to give that up because some people at a party don't approve." Grace's eyes softened. "Then don't." "But the boys?" "The boys will be fine. Children are resilient. They care about love, not gossip. As long as they know they're safe, as long as they know they're wanted, they can handle anything." Richard wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. "And what about you?" he asked. "What happens when the gossip gets worse? When people start saying you're only here for my money? When they call you a gold digger or worse?" Grace flinched. "That's already happening, isn't it?" Richard said quietly. "I've heard a few things. From delivery people. From the gardener's wife." Grace's voice was steady, but he could see the hurt beneath it. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." "Why?" "Because you don't deserve it. Because you came into my house and saved my children and asked for nothing in return. And the idea that people would twist that into something ugly." "Richard." Grace took his hand. "I didn't come here for your approval. I didn't come here for other people's approval. I came here because 3 little boys needed someone, and I had love to give. That's it. That's all that matters." Richard looked at their joined hands. Hers dark against his pale skin. 2 people from different worlds brought together by grief and healing, and something that felt suspiciously like hope. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "I won't let them drive you away." "They won't. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise," Grace smiled. "I promise." A week later, the article appeared. Richard's assistant called him at 7 a.m. "Sir, there's something you need to see." She sent him a link. A society blog, one of those gossip sites that pretended to be journalism. The headline hit him like a punch to the gut. "Billionaire widower's new live-in nanny," or something more. There was a photo. Richard and Grace at the farmer's market, the boys between them. Oliver was holding Grace's hand. Ethan was pointing at something off camera. Lucas was on Richard's shoulders. They looked like a family. The article was worse. It speculated about the nature of their relationship. It mentioned Eleanor's death and suggested Richard had moved on suspiciously fast. It quoted anonymous sources who claimed Grace was an opportunist who had targeted a wealthy widower. It even dug up information about her past, the fact that she'd been a nanny for 2 other wealthy families, implying some kind of pattern. Richard's hands shook as he read. He called his lawyer immediately. "I want it taken down." "Richard, it's protected speech. It doesn't say anything actionable, just asks questions and quotes unnamed sources. It's destroying an innocent woman's reputation." "The law doesn't see it that way." Richard hung up and called Grace. She didn't answer. He found her in the guest cottage sitting on her bed staring at her phone. The article was open on the screen. "Grace?" She looked up. Her eyes were red. "My parents called," she said. "My sister, 3 former clients. They all saw it. They all wanted to know if it was true." "It's not true. I know it's not true, but that doesn't matter, does it? Once something's on the internet, it's forever. My name is attached to this now. Every time someone searches for me, they'll find this article. Every future employer, every future relationship, they'll all see this." Richard sat beside her. "I'll fix this." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I will." Grace shook her head slowly. "This is what I was afraid of. This is why I said we should wait. Because I knew something like this would happen." "You can't blame yourself for other people's cruelty." "I'm not blaming myself. I'm being realistic." She looked at him, her eyes filled with pain. "Maybe I should leave." Richard's blood went cold. "What?" "Maybe it's better for everyone if I just go. The gossip stops. The boys don't have to hear these things. You don't have to defend me anymore." "Grace, no, no." "Richard, I won't let you leave because of this. I won't let some anonymous coward with a gossip blog drive you away from the family that loves you. The family that—" Grace stopped. "Richard, I'm the nanny. You stopped being the nanny months ago. You know that. I know that. The boys certainly know that." "Then what am I—" The question hung between them. Richard took her hands. "You're the woman who saved my sons. You're the woman who taught me how to grieve and live at the same time. You're the woman who brought light back into a house that was dying." He paused. "And you're the woman I'm falling in love with." Grace's breath caught. "Richard, I know we said we'd wait. I know we said we'd be careful, but I'm done being careful. I'm done letting fear dictate my life. I love you, Grace. I love you, and I don't care who knows it." Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. "You don't mean that. I have never meant anything more in my life. But Eleanor is gone." Richard's voice cracked. "And I will love her until the day I die. But she's not here, and you are. And I truly believe that she would want me to be happy. She would want the boys to be happy. And you make us happy, Grace. You make us feel like a family again." Grace was crying openly now. Great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. So am I. What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" Grace laughed through her tears, the same question he'd asked her weeks ago thrown back at him. "You're impossible," she said. "I've been told." Richard reached up and cupped her face in his hands, wiped her tears with his thumbs, looked into her eyes, those beautiful broken eyes that had seen so much pain and still chose to love. "Stay," he said. "Please stay. Not as my nanny, not as my employee. Stay as whatever this is, whatever we're becoming. Stay, and let's figure it out together." Grace closed her eyes. "The boys? The boys already love you. They already call you Mama Grace when they think we're not listening. They already think of you as family. All we're doing is making it official." And the gossip. We'll face it together. We'll show them what we are. A family. A real family. And anyone who doesn't like it can go to hell. Grace opened her eyes. Something had shifted in them. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something stronger. Something that looked like hope. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay. I'll stay. I'll stay. And we'll face it together. And—" Richard kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, careful. Two people who had been hurt badly, finding their way back to something they thought they'd lost forever. Grace's hands came up to his shoulders. Richard pulled her closer. The kiss deepened. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I've wanted to do that for months," Richard admitted. "Why didn't you?" "Because I was scared. Because I thought it was too soon. Because I thought I didn't deserve to be happy again." And now, Richard looked at her, this woman who had walked into his broken life and refused to leave. "Now I think maybe happiness isn't something you deserve. Maybe it's something you choose. And I choose you, Grace. I choose us." Grace smiled. "Then I choose you too." They sat together on her bed, hands intertwined, hearts racing. "What do we do now?" Grace asked. "Now we go talk to the boys. We tell them the truth. We ask them how they feel about this. And if they're not okay with it, then we figure it out, together." Richard squeezed her hand. "But I think they're going to be more than okay with it." "How do you know?" "Because they already call you Mama Grace. Because they already love you. Because Lucas asked Eleanor's headstone if it was okay to love you too." Grace's eyes filled with fresh tears. He did. And I think that's about as much permission as we're ever going to get." Grace laughed, a real laugh, bright and warm. "Okay," she said. "Let's go talk to the boys." They found the boys in the playroom building, a tower out of blocks. Richard paused at the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. Grace stood beside him, her hand trembling slightly in his. This was it, the moment that would change everything. "Ready?" he whispered. "No," Grace admitted, "but let's do it anyway." They walked in together. Oliver looked up first. His eyes dropped to their joined hands, and something flickered across his face. Curiosity. Hope. Fear. "Daddy, Miss Grace, what's going on?" Ethan and Lucas stopped building. All three boys stared at their father and their nanny, sensing that something important was about to happen. Richard knelt down so he was at eye level with his sons. "Boys, Miss Grace and I need to talk to you about something." "Are we in trouble?" Lucas asked immediately. "No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble." Grace knelt beside Richard. "We just want to ask you something." Oliver's eyes were fixed on their hands still intertwined. "You're holding hands," he said quietly. "Yes, we are." "Like how you and Mommy used to hold hands." Richard's throat tightened. "Yes, like that." Silence. The three boys looked at each other, that silent communication passing between them again. "Are you going to marry Miss Grace?" Ethan asked. Richard blinked. "What?" "Because Tommy at soccer said when a daddy holds hands with a lady who's not your mommy, it means they're going to get married." Richard looked at Grace. She looked back at him, equally stunned. That's not—" Richard stumbled over his words. "We wanted to talk to you first, before anything else, because your feelings matter more than anything." "More than your feelings?" Oliver asked. "Yes. Even more than Miss Grace's feelings." Grace squeezed Richard's hand. "Even more than mine." Lucas stood up and walked over to them. He studied their joined hands carefully, like he was examining a particularly interesting bug. "Do you love Miss Grace, Daddy?" The question hit Richard square in the chest. "Yes," he said. "I do." "Do you love Daddy, Miss Grace?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Lucas. I love your daddy very much." "Do you still love Mommy?" "I will always love your mommy," Richard said. Loving Miss Grace doesn't mean I stop loving Mommy. You can love more than one person. Your heart has room." Lucas nodded slowly, processing this. Then he looked at his brothers. "I think it's okay," he announced. "Me too," Ethan said quietly. Oliver was still staring at their hands. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. Of the three boys, he was the one who remembered Eleanor most clearly. He was the one who still had nightmares about the night she died. He was the one who kept a picture of her under his pillow. "Oliver," Richard said gently, "what are you thinking?" Oliver didn't answer for a long moment. "Does this mean Miss Grace is going to be our new mommy?" "I could never replace your mommy," Grace said quickly. "I would never try to." "But will you be here?" Oliver interrupted. "Forever? Will you stay and not leave like Mommy did?" Grace's heart shattered. "Oh, Oliver." She reached out and pulled him into her arms. "Your Mommy didn't want to leave. She loved you more than anything in the world. What happened to her, it wasn't her choice. She would have stayed if she could." "I know." Oliver's voice was muffled against her shoulder. "But she's gone, and you're here, and I just want to know if you're going to stay." Grace looked at Richard over Oliver's head. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm going to stay," she said. "I promise you, Oliver. I'm going to stay for as long as you want me." "What if I want you to stay forever?" "Then I'll stay forever." Oliver pulled back and looked at her. Really looked at her with those eyes that were so much like Eleanor's. "Okay," he said finally. "Then I think it's okay too." Richard let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "You're sure, all of you? Because if you're not comfortable with this—" "Daddy?" Lucas put his small hand on Richard's cheek. "We love Miss Grace. We want her to stay. We want you to be happy." He paused. "You haven't been happy in a long time. You smile now. You laugh. You play with us. That's because of Miss Grace." Richard couldn't speak. He pulled all three of his sons into his arms and held them, tears streaming down his face. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you all so much." "We love you too, Daddy," Oliver said. "And we love Miss Grace. So please stop crying and let's go have ice cream." Richard laughed a wet, broken sound. "Ice cream for breakfast." "Mommy, let us have ice cream for breakfast on special days," Ethan said. "Is this a special day?" Richard looked at Grace. She was crying and smiling at the same time. "Yes," he said. "This is definitely a special day." They had ice cream for breakfast. The gossip didn't stop. The article spread. More blogs picked it up. Richard's name trended on social media for 2 days. The comments were brutal speculation about Grace's motives, judgment about how fast Richard had moved on, racist dog whistles that made Grace sick to read. Richard's board of directors called an emergency meeting. He walked into the conference room to find 12 faces staring at him with varying degrees of concern, disapproval, and fear. "Richard, we need to talk about the situation." "What situation?" "The articles, the social media, the attention." His chief marketing officer, Patricia, slid a tablet across the table. "Our stock dropped 2% yesterday. We've had 3 major clients call asking questions." "Asking questions about what?" "About you. About your judgment. About whether your personal life is going to affect your business decisions." Richard looked at the tablet. Headlines scrolled across the screen. Hartley CEO's secret nanny romance. Billionaire widower trades up. Inside the scandal-rocking Hartley Industries. "This is gossip," Richard said flatly. "Not news." "To Wall Street, there's no difference," Patricia replied. "Perception is reality, and right now the perception is that you're making questionable choices." "Questionable choices." Richard's voice went cold. "You mean falling in love?" "We mean hiring a young woman, moving her into your home, and becoming romantically involved with her while your wife's body is barely cold." Richard stood up so fast, his chair crashed backward. "My wife died 9 months ago," I spent 6 of those months unable to look at my own children because they reminded me of her. I spent 6 months sleeping on a couch because I couldn't enter our bedroom. I spent 6 months watching my sons become ghosts, silent, broken, fading away. His voice shook with fury. And then, Grace came. She brought them back. She brought me back. She saved my family. And you want to call that a questionable choice? Richard, we understand you're emotional. I'm not emotional. I'm furious. Because you're sitting in this room judging a woman you've never met, based on gossip from people who know nothing about our lives. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. Grace Johnson is the best thing that's happened to my family since Eleanor died. And if you have a problem with that, if my personal life is too scandalous for your delicate sensibilities, then you can find yourselves a new CEO. Silence. Patricia cleared her throat. Richard, no one is suggesting... Yes, you are. Richard picked up the tablet and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. You're suggesting I abandon the woman I love because some people on the internet don't approve. You're suggesting my children lose another mother figure because of stock prices. You're suggesting I put this company ahead of my family. He straightened his tie. I built this company. I made every single one of you rich, and I'll burn it to the ground before I let you tell me who I can and can't love. He walked out. His hands were shaking when he got to the parking garage. He sat in his car for 10 minutes trying to breathe, trying to calm down. His phone buzzed, a text from Grace. How did it go? Richard stared at the message. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Come home, he typed. I need to see you. Is everything okay? It will be. Just come home. I'm already here. I never left. Richard smiled despite everything. I never left. He drove home faster than he should have. Grace was waiting in the kitchen when he walked in. The boys are with your mother-in-law for the afternoon, she said. I thought we might need some time to talk. I love you. Grace blinked. What? I love you. I told my board to go to hell. I told them I'd burn the company down before I gave you up. I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have been more diplomatic. But I couldn't. I couldn't sit there and listen to them talk about you like you were some kind of liability. Richard slowed down. What happened? He told her everything. The meeting, the accusations, the tablet shattering against the wall, Patricia's face, his ultimatum. Grace listened in silence. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You could lose everything, she said finally. I already lost everything that mattered once. I'm not losing it again. Richard. Grace, stop. He crossed the kitchen and took her hands. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me, for the boys, for the family we're building. You don't owe me anything. You don't have to feel guilty or obligated or... I don't feel guilty. Grace's voice was fierce. I feel scared. I feel like everything is moving too fast. I feel like we're standing on a cliff and the ground is crumbling beneath us. Then we jump. What? We jump, together. We stop waiting. We stop hiding. We tell the world who we are, and we dare them to stop us. And if they do stop us, if the gossip destroys your company, if the board votes you out, then I'll start another company. I'll find another way. I came from nothing, Grace. I built everything I have from nothing. I can do it again if I have to. He cupped her face in his hands. But I can't build another you. I can't find another family like this one. Some things can't be replaced. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I'm not worth destroying your life over. You're worth everything. Richard's voice cracked. Don't you understand? Before you came, I was surviving. Just surviving. Getting through each day because I didn't have the courage to do anything else. But now I'm living. Now I have something to fight for. Now I wake up in the morning and actually want to see what happens next. Grace was crying openly now. I never meant to fall in love with you, she whispered. I know. I came here to help your children. That's all. I came here to put my broken heart into something useful. I never expected... Neither did I. They stood there in the kitchen, foreheads pressed together, tears mixing on their cheeks. "What do we do now?" Grace asked. "Now we fight." "How?" Richard pulled back and looked at her. "I'm going to do something I should have done weeks ago. I'm going to tell the truth, publicly, on my terms." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm going to schedule an interview. A real one, with a real journalist. And I'm going to tell them exactly who you are and exactly what you mean to this family. And I'm going to dare the world to judge us." Grace's eyes widened. "Richard, are you sure? Once you do that, there's no going back." "I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. With you." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. Okay. Let's fight." The interview was scheduled for the following week. Richard chose carefully not a tabloid, not a gossip show, but a serious journalist from the New York Times. Rebecca Morrison had covered business and family issues for 20 years. She was known for being fair, thorough, and unafraid to ask hard questions. The day of the interview, Richard's PR team called 5 times. "Sir, I really think we should reconsider this approach. The approach is final. At least let us prepare talking points. No talking points. Sir." Richard hung up. Grace was sitting on the living room couch when he came downstairs. She was wearing a simple blue dress, the one Eleanor had bought her weeks ago, without telling her, leaving it in her cottage with a note that said, "For special occasions." "You look beautiful," Richard said. Grace stood up, smoothing her dress nervously. "I'm terrified." "Me too. What if this makes everything worse? Then we'll deal with it, together." The doorbell rang. Richard took Grace's hand. "Ready?" "No." "Perfect. Neither am I." They opened the door together. Rebecca Morrison was exactly what Richard expected, professional, sharp-eyed, carrying a small recorder and a notebook. She shook both their hands and followed them into the living room. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview," Rebecca said, sitting down across from them. "I know this must be difficult." "It's necessary," Richard replied. "There's been a lot of speculation about my personal life. I wanted to set the record straight." "Then let's start at the beginning." Rebecca clicked on her recorder. "Tell me about Grace Johnson." Richard looked at Grace. She nodded slightly. "Grace Johnson is the reason my sons are alive today," Richard said, "and I mean that literally." He told her everything. About Eleanor's death, about the 8 months of silence, about the parade of nannies who came and went, unable to reach his broken children. About the morning he came home to find Grace on her hands and knees playing horsey, while his sons laughed for the first time since their mother died. "She didn't fix them," Richard said. "She just loved them, unconditionally, patiently. She sat on the floor and read books to children who wouldn't listen. She made pancakes for children who wouldn't eat. She was present day after day, refusing to give up. And eventually they came back. My sons came back." Rebecca turned to Grace. "And what about you, Ms. Johnson? Some people have suggested that your relationship with Mr. Hartley is opportunistic." Grace's jaw tightened. "I lost my daughter 2 years ago," she said quietly. "Her name was Maya. She was 3 years old. Leukemia." Rebecca's pen stopped moving. "I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Grace's voice was steady, but Richard could see her hands trembling in her lap. "After Maya died, I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't see the point. My husband left me. My career was gone. Everything I'd built my life around had disappeared." She paused, took a breath. "I became a nanny because I didn't know how to exist in a world without children's laughter. I thought if I could help other people's kids, if I could pour my love into someone, anyone, maybe I could survive. And then you came to the Hartley household. And then I came here." Grace looked at Richard. "And I met 3 little boys who were drowning in the same grief I was, who had lost someone so important that they'd forgotten how to be children. And I thought maybe I could help. Maybe I could use my own pain to help them through theirs." And in the process, you fell in love with their father. Grace didn't flinch. I didn't mean to. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for anything except a reason to keep going. But Richard, her voice softened. Richard saw me. Not just what I could do for his children, but who I actually was. The broken parts. The scared parts. The parts I'd been hiding from everyone, including myself. And he didn't run away. Neither did you, Richard added quietly. I told her about Eleanor, about the guilt I carried, about how I couldn't sleep in our bedroom or touch her things or say her name without falling apart. And she didn't run. Rebecca looked between them. What would you say to people who think this relationship is inappropriate, who think you've moved on too quickly from your wife's death? Richard's jaw tightened. I would say that grief doesn't follow a timeline. I would say that loving Grace doesn't mean I've stopped loving Eleanor. I would say that my wife would want me to be happy, would want our sons to have someone who loves them. He paused. And I would say that the people judging us have no idea what they're talking about. They haven't lost a spouse. They haven't watched their children disappear into themselves. They haven't had to rebuild a family from ashes. And what about the racial element? Rebecca asked carefully. Some of the comments online have been troubling. Grace spoke before Richard could. Some people will always find a reason to hate, she said. If I were white, they'd say I was too young. If I were older, they'd say I was too ambitious. If I were rich, they'd say I didn't understand real life. There's no version of this story where everyone approves. And I've made peace with that. Has it been hard? The comments. Yes. Grace's voice was honest. It's been hard. There have been days when I wanted to quit, when the weight of other people's judgment felt like too much to carry. But then I look at Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas. I look at the family we're building, and I remember why I'm here. Rebecca turned off her recorder. Off the record, she said. I think you're both incredibly brave, and I think the people attacking you are cowards. Off the record, Richard replied. I appreciate that. Rebecca smiled. The story will run on Sunday. I'll do my best to tell it fairly. That's all we can ask. They walked her to the door, shook hands, watched her car disappear down the driveway. Then Richard turned to Grace. It's done. It's done. How do you feel? Grace let out a shaky breath. Terrified, relieved, hopeful. She looked at him. Like maybe we have a chance. Richard pulled her into his arms. We have more than a chance. We have each other. They stood there in the doorway holding on to each other, waiting for the story to break. The article ran on Sunday morning. Love in the Wreckage. A billionaire. A nanny and the grief that brought them together. It was fair. It was honest. It told their story, both their stories, with compassion and nuance. It quoted Richard's words about Eleanor, Grace's words about Maya, and most importantly, it included a statement from Margaret Bennett, Eleanor's mother. My daughter would have loved Grace, Margaret said in the article. She would have seen her heart immediately. Eleanor believed that love was infinite, that loving someone new didn't diminish the love you had for someone else. I believe Richard and Grace honor her memory by choosing to love again. The response was overwhelming. For every hateful comment, there were 10 supportive ones. People shared their own stories of loss and healing. Widows and widowers wrote to say they understood. Parents who'd lost children thanked Grace for speaking openly about Maya. Richard's stock went up 3%. His board called another emergency meeting this time to apologize. We were wrong, Patricia said. The public response has been not what we expected. You mean it hasn't been the scandal you predicted? I mean people are complicated, and apparently they respond better to honesty than to damage control. Richard didn't say, I told you so. He wanted to, but he didn't. That night he took Grace and the boys out for dinner. Their first public appearance as a family. People stared, some took pictures, a few whispered, but more people smiled, more people nodded. More people looked at them, this strange, beautiful, imperfect family, and saw something worth celebrating. After dinner, they walked through Central Park. The boys ran ahead, chasing each other around trees, their laughter echoing through the evening air. Grace slipped her hand into Richard's. "Thank you," she said. "For what? For fighting, for not giving up, for choosing us." Richard squeezed her hand. It wasn't a choice. It was the only thing that made sense. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play. "I've been thinking," Richard said finally. "About what? About the future. About what we want to build. About how to honor Eleanor and Maya while still moving forward." Grace looked at him curiously. "I have an idea," Richard continued. "Something I want to do. Something I want us to do together." "What kind of idea?" Richard stopped walking, turned to face her. "The east wing of the house. Eleanor was going to turn it into something. She had plans, drawings, ideas, but she died before she could finish. What was she going to do with it? She wanted to build a place for families, a place where people going through hard times could find support, where children could play and heal, where grief didn't have to be carried alone." Grace's breath caught. "Richard, I want to build it. For her, for Maya, for every family out there that's drowning the way we were." He took both her hands. "I want to call it the Maya and Eleanor Foundation, and I want you to run it with me." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You want to name it after our daughters?" "They brought us together, Grace. Their loss, their memory, it's the reason we found each other. I want to honor that. I want to turn our pain into something beautiful." Grace was crying openly now. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Grace looked at him, this man who had lost everything and chosen to keep loving anyway. This man who had walked into her broken life and refused to leave. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Richard pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. Across the park, the boys noticed their parents had stopped walking. "Daddy, Miss Grace. Come on." Richard laughed and wiped his eyes. "Coming," he called back. He took Grace's hand and together they walked toward their children, toward their future, toward everything they were building together. 6 months later, the Maya and Eleanor Foundation opened its doors. Richard stood at the podium looking out at the crowd gathered in the east wing of his estate. Donors, journalists, families who would be the first residents and friends who had believed in them when no one else did. Grace sat in the front row with Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas. The boys were wearing matching suits, the first time Richard had seen them in formal clothes since Eleanor's funeral. But this time, they weren't somber. They were excited, proud. "I built my career on systems." Richard began, his voice steady. "Data, control, logic. I believed that if I could understand how things worked, I could solve any problem." He paused, looked at Grace. "Then I lost my wife, and I learned that some things can't be solved. Some things can only be survived." The room was silent. For 8 months after Eleanor died, I was a ghost in my own home. I couldn't look at my sons without seeing her. I couldn't hear their voices without remembering hers. I thought the only way to survive was to freeze. Everything. Keep her things exactly where she left them. Keep the world exactly as it was the day she died. I thought if I could just hold on tight enough, maybe it wouldn't be real. His voice cracked slightly. It was real. It's still real. Eleanor is gone, and no amount of holding on will bring her back. Richard looked at his sons. But something else is real too. Love. Connection. The possibility of healing. I learned that from 3 little boys who refused to give up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. And I learned it from a woman who walked into my house with nothing but a broken heart and a willingness to stay. He extended his hand toward Grace. Grace Johnson lost her daughter Maya 2 years ago. She knows grief the way I know grief, intimately, painfully, permanently. She came to my home as a nanny. She stayed because my sons needed her. And somewhere along the way, she became family. Grace stood up slowly. The boys stood with her, holding her hands, walking her toward the podium. This foundation exists because of 2 little girls who never got to grow up, Richard continued. Maya Johnson and Eleanor's dream. We named it after both of them, after the daughter Grace lost, and the vision my wife never got to see. Grace joined him at the podium. Richard took her hand. Eleanor wanted to build a place where families could heal together. Grace said, her voice quiet but steady. Where children going through impossible things could still play, still laugh, still be children. Where parents drowning in grief could find people who understood. She looked out at the crowd. I know what it's like to watch your child disappear. I know what it's like to sit in a hospital room praying for a miracle that never comes. I know what it's like to go home to an empty house and wonder if you'll ever feel anything but pain again. Tears streamed down her face. The Maya and Eleanor Foundation is for those families. It's for the parents who can't sleep. It's for the siblings who don't understand. It's for the grandparents and aunts and uncles and friends who want to help but don't know how. She squeezed Richard's hand. It's for everyone who's ever loved someone and lost them. Because grief doesn't have to be carried alone, and healing doesn't have to mean forgetting. Richard pulled out an envelope. One more thing, he said. This foundation isn't just mine. It belongs to Grace too, legally, officially, permanently. He handed her the envelope. Grace opened it with trembling hands. Inside were documents making her co-director of the foundation, equal partner, equal owner. But there was something else. Guardianship papers. If anything ever happens to me, Richard said quietly, you're their legal guardian. Oliver, Ethan, and Lucas. You're already their mother in every way that matters. This just makes it official. Grace's knees buckled. Richard caught her. You don't have to, she started. I know I don't have to. I want to. Richard cupped her face in his hands. Your family, Grace. You've been family since the day Lucas asked if you could be a horsey. This is just the paperwork. Grace laughed through her tears, a broken, beautiful sound. The boys ran forward and wrapped themselves around both of them. Oliver, Ethan, Lucas, all of them crying, all of them holding on. The audience stood and applauded. But Richard barely heard it. All he heard was the sound of his family, his new, unexpected, miraculous family breathing together. The celebration lasted for hours. Donors toured the facility. Families who would be the first residents talked to counselors. Children ran through the playrooms that Grace had designed. Laughter echoed through hallways that had been silent for so long. Richard watched it all with a feeling he couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe. Gratitude. Hope. Margaret Bennett, Eleanor's mother, found him near the garden. She would be so proud of you, Margaret said. You think so? I know so. Margaret took his hand. Eleanor loved you, Richard. She loved you for your ambition and your drive and your stubbornness. But she also worried about you. She worried that you worked too hard, that you didn't know how to let people in, that you'd bury yourself in your company if anything ever happened to her. Richard's throat tightened. She was right to worry. She was. But she would also be thrilled to see what you've become. Margaret looked toward Grace, who was showing a group of children the art therapy room. That woman saved you, and you saved her right back. We saved each other. That's the way it should be. Margaret squeezed his hand. Don't let her go, Richard. Don't let guilt or fear or other people's opinions make you hesitate. Eleanor would want you happy. She'd want the boys happy. She'd want Grace to be part of this family. She already is, Margaret smiled. Good. Then make it official. She walked away, leaving Richard standing in the garden, his mind racing. Make it official. He'd been thinking about it for weeks, months really, ever since that night in the cottage when Grace had said she'd stay. He'd been thinking about the future, their future, and what it might look like. But he hadn't asked, hadn't pushed. Grace had said they should wait, should let things settle, should make sure what they had was real. It was real. Richard had never been more certain of anything in his life. That night, after the guests left and the boys were asleep, Richard found Grace on the back porch. She was sitting on Eleanor's bench, the one by the roses, looking up at the stars. Richard sat down beside her. "Hell of a day," he said. Grace laughed softly. "Hell of a day. You were amazing up there, at the podium. The way you talked about Maya, about the families we're going to help. You made people believe. I believe. That makes it easier." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" Richard said. "You can ask me anything." "Do you remember what you said to me that night in your cottage about waiting until the first year was over?" Grace turned to look at him. "I remember. It's been over a year, 14 months actually." "I know. So I was wondering." Richard reached into his pocket. "If maybe we've waited long enough." He pulled out a small velvet box. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. "Richard, I know this is fast. I know people will talk. I know there will be gossip and judgment, and people who think we're crazy." He opened the box. Inside was a simple diamond ring. Elegant, beautiful, not ostentatious. The kind of ring Eleanor would have chosen. "But I also know that I love you. I know that my sons love you. I know that every morning I wake up grateful that you're in my life, and every night I fall asleep hoping you'll still be there tomorrow." Tears streamed down Grace's face. "Grace Johnson, you walked into my broken house and put it back together. You gave my sons their laughter back. You gave me a reason to keep living." Richard's voice shook. "I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be careful anymore. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He took her hand. "Will you marry me?" Grace stared at the ring, stared at Richard, stared at the stars overhead. "What about Eleanor?" she whispered. "What about her? This was her bench, her garden, her roses." Grace's voice cracked. "I feel like I'm stealing her life." "You're not stealing anything." Richard cupped her face in his hands. "Eleanor is gone. I will love her until I die. But she would want this. She would want me to be happy. She would want the boys to have a mother. She would want you to be that mother." "How do you know?" "Because I knew her. Because she told me once before she got sick, before any of this happened, that if anything ever happened to her, she wanted me to find love again. She said life was too short to spend it grieving. She said the boys deserved a father who was present, not one who was stuck in the past." Grace was sobbing now. "I don't deserve this." "Yes, you do." Richard wiped her tears with his thumbs. "You deserve happiness. You deserve love. You deserve a family that cherishes you. And I want to be that family. Me and Oliver and Ethan and Lucas. We choose you, Grace. All of us. We choose you." Grace looked at him, this man who had lost everything and chosen to keep loving anyway. This man who had fought for her, defended her, built something beautiful with her. "Yes," she whispered. Richard's heart stopped. "Yes. Yes." Grace laughed through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be your wife. Yes, I'll be their mother. Yes to all of it." Richard slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her deeply, thoroughly, like a man who had finally found his way home. They got married 3 months later. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends. They held it in Eleanor's garden, surrounded by the roses she had planted the year she and Richard got married. Margaret Bennett walked Grace down the aisle. "Eleanor would have loved this," Margaret whispered. "I hope so. I know so." The boys stood next to Richard, serving as his best men. Oliver held the rings. Ethan held the flowers. Lucas held a picture of Eleanor, his idea, so she could be there too. Grace wore a simple white dress. She carried a bouquet of roses from Eleanor's garden and dandelions from the park, Maya's favorite flower. "We are gathered here today," the officiant began, "to witness the union of Richard Hartley and Grace Johnson." The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows exchanged rings, a kiss that made the boys giggle. But then Richard did something unexpected. "Wait," he said. "Before we finish, I want to add something." He turned to face the small crowd. "This ceremony isn't just about Grace and me. It's about all of us. It's about becoming a family." He knelt down, so he was eye level with his sons. "Oliver, Ethan, Lucas, I want to ask you something." The boys looked at each other confused. "Do you want Miss Grace to be your mom, not instead of mommy? In addition to mommy? Someone who will love you and take care of you and be there for you always." "We already call her Mama Grace," Lucas said. "I know, but I want to make it official. I want her to legally adopt you, to be your mother in every way on paper in the world forever." Richard looked at Grace. "If that's okay with her." Grace was crying again. "It's more than okay," she managed. "So what do you say, boys? Do you want Mama Grace to be your forever mom?" Oliver spoke first. "Yes." Ethan nodded. "Yes." Lucas threw himself into Grace's arms. "Yes." The small crowd applauded. Grace held all three boys, sobbing into their hair. Richard stood up and put his arms around all of them, his wife, his sons, his family. "Then I now pronounce us officially and forever a family," Richard said, "and I get to kiss my bride." He kissed Grace again. The boys made exaggerated gagging sounds. Everyone laughed. 1 year later, the Maya and Eleanor Foundation was thriving. They'd helped over 200 families. They'd expanded to a second location in New Jersey. They'd received recognition from the governor and donations from people around the world who had read their story and wanted to help. But the most important thing, the thing that mattered more than any award or donation, was happening right now in the playroom of the original facility. Grace sat on the floor with a little girl named Emma. Emma was 4 years old. Her mother was dying of cancer. Her father was overwhelmed, barely holding it together. Emma had stopped speaking 2 weeks ago, just stopped like someone had flipped a switch. Grace knew that silence. She recognized it in her soul. "You don't have to talk," Grace said softly, "but I'm going to sit here with you, and if you ever want to say something, I'll listen." Emma didn't respond. She just stared at the blocks in front of her. Grace started building. A tower, slowly, carefully, 1 block at a time. Emma watched. After a few minutes, Emma reached out and added a block to the tower. Grace smiled, but didn't say anything. She just kept building. Emma added another block, and another, and another. They built together in silence for 20 minutes. The tower got taller and taller. Then Emma whispered something. "My mommy is dying." Grace's heart cracked. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. She's going to leave me like my grandma left, like everyone leaves." Grace stopped building. "Can I tell you a secret, Emma?" Emma looked at her. "I had a little girl once. Her name was Maya. She was 3 years old, just a little younger than you. And she got very, very sick." Emma's eyes widened. "Did she get better?" Grace took a breath. "No, she didn't. She went to heaven. And I was very, very sad for a very long time." Emma's lower lip trembled. "But you know what I learned," Grace continued. "I learned that the people we love never really leave us. They stay in our hearts. They stay in our memories. Every time I see a dandelion that was Maya's favorite flower, I think of her. Every time I hear someone laugh, I remember her laugh. She's still with me, Emma. She always will be." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. "Will my mommy still be with me, even when she goes to heaven?" "Always." Grace pulled the little girl into her arms. "Always and forever. No matter what happens. Love doesn't die, sweetheart. It just changes. It becomes something you carry with you everywhere you go. Emma sobbed into Grace's shoulder. I don't want her to go. I know. I didn't want Maya to go either. But sometimes we don't get to choose. Grace held her tighter. What we do get to choose is how we remember them, how we carry them, how we let their love make us stronger. They sat there on the playroom floor holding each other. And for the first time in 2 weeks, Emma started talking again. That night, Grace came home late. Richard was in the kitchen washing dishes. The boys were already asleep. How was Emma? He asked. She talked today. Richard turned around. She talked. For the first time since she got here, we built blocks together and she just started talking. That's amazing. You're amazing. Grace sat down at the kitchen table. She looked exhausted, but also Richard thought she looked peaceful. I told her about Maya. Richard dried his hands and sat across from her. How did that feel? Hard. It's always hard. Grace touched the locket at her neck, the one she still wore every day. But also right. Like Maya's story can help other people. Like her life meant something, even though it was so short. Richard reached across the table and took her hand. It meant something to me. Everything that happened, Maya, your grief, you coming here, it's all connected. Maya led you to us, and you led us back to life. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I miss her, she whispered. Every day. I miss her so much, it still takes my breath away sometimes. I know. I miss Eleanor the same way. But it doesn't crush me anymore. The missing. Grace looked at him. It used to feel like drowning, like I couldn't breathe, but now it feels like carrying something heavy. Still heavy, still hard, but manageable. Because I'm not carrying it alone. You'll never carry anything alone again. Not as long as I'm breathing. Grace smiled that soft, beautiful smile that still made Richard's heart skip. I know. Richard stood up and pulled her to her feet. Come on, let's go check on the boys. They walked upstairs hand in hand. Oliver's room first. He was sprawled across his bed, one arm hanging off the side, mouth open, snoring softly. On his nightstand was a picture of Eleanor, and next to it, a new picture of Grace. Both mothers. Both loved. Ethan's room next. He slept curled up in a ball, clutching a stuffed elephant that had belonged to Maya. Grace had given it to him months ago, telling him it had belonged to a very special little girl who would want him to have it. Ethan had never slept without it since. Lucas's room last. He was the light sleeper, the one who always stirred when they checked on him. But tonight, he stayed asleep, a small smile on his face, dreaming whatever happy dreams 5-year-olds dream. Richard and Grace stood in the doorway, watching their youngest son breathe. I can't believe this is my life, Grace whispered. What do you mean? 2 years ago, I was alone. Broken. I didn't think I'd ever feel anything but pain again. And now, she gestured at Lucas at the hallway behind them, at everything. Now I have a husband who loves me, 3 sons who call me Mama, a foundation that's helping hundreds of families, a house full of laughter. And a lot of dirty laundry, Richard added. Grace laughed. And a lot of dirty laundry. Richard pulled her close. You deserve all of it, every bit of it. You earned this happiness by refusing to give up on yourself, on us, on those boys. We earned it together. Okay. We earned it together. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the dim hallway of their home. Richard. Thank you. For what? For fighting for me. For fighting for us. For building something beautiful out of all our broken pieces. Richard kissed the top of her head. Thank you for staying. They walked to their bedroom, the master bedroom that Richard hadn't been able to enter for months after Eleanor died. It looked different now. Grace had redecorated, not erasing Eleanor, but making room for new memories. Eleanor's painting still hung on the walls. Her jewelry box still sat on the dresser. But there were new things too. Grace's books on the nightstand, her clothes in the closet, her presence everywhere. Two lives woven together. Richard lay in bed, Grace curled against his side, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. A drunk driver, a dead wife, 3 sons who stopped laughing, 8 months of silence, and then a woman on her hands and knees playing horsey, refusing to give up on children who weren't even hers. Grace, I need to tell you something. She lifted her head. What? The day I came home and heard the boys laughing the day I first saw you, I punched a wall. I know, I bandaged your hand. But you don't know why. Grace was quiet, waiting. I punched the wall because I was angry, furious. My sons were laughing, and it wasn't because of me. I was their father. I was supposed to be the one who made them happy. And instead, I'd spent 8 months failing them. And then you showed up and did in weeks what I couldn't do in months. Richard, let me finish. He took a breath. I was jealous and ashamed, and so grateful it scared me, because in that moment I knew my sons needed you more than they needed me, and I didn't know how to feel about that. And now I know the truth. Richard looked at her. They don't need you more than me. They need us. Together. Different kinds of love, different kinds of strength, both essential. I can't do what you do. You can't do what I do. But together, we give them everything. Grace's eyes were wet. When did you get so wise? I learned from this woman I know. She taught me that love isn't a competition, that there's always room for more. She sounds smart. She's the smartest person I've ever met. Grace kissed him soft and slow and full of promise. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. Richard pulled her closer. Now and always, through everything that comes. Through everything that comes. They fell asleep tangled together at peace. And in the rooms down the hall, 3 little boys dreamed of horses and pancakes and mothers who stayed forever. The house that had once been a graveyard was alive again. Not because the grief was gone, it would never be completely gone, but because they had learned to carry it together. And somehow in the carrying they had found something unexpected. Joy, connection, family. Richard Hartley had built an empire on control, on systems, on the belief that he could solve any problem if he just worked hard enough. But love had taught him something different. Love couldn't be controlled. It couldn't be systematized. It could only be felt, shared, and chosen again and again every single day. He had chosen Eleanor. He had chosen his sons. And now he had chosen Grace. 3 choices. 3 loves. 1 family. Sometimes when everything falls apart, God puts the pieces back together in ways you never imagined. Not to erase what was lost, but to show you that love is bigger than grief. That presence is more powerful than perfection. That family isn't just who you're born to. It's who stays when the world goes dark. It's who brings the light. And in the Hartley house at long last, the light had returned to stay.